All right, everyone. Hello, I am BMillzebub, and welcome to my channel. For tonight's interview, I have the one and only Aron Ra. Now, you've probably seen him around. He's kind of a big deal. How you doing tonight, Aron?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Fantastic. So, what are you drinking on right now?
Right now I am drinking Baltica Imperial Stout. This is the only brand by Baltica that is printed in Roman numerals, which pisses me off because I'd rather it be in Cyrillic.
All right. And just in case anyone's curious, I am drinking what's called the Ace Runner. It's a hazy IPA, and I'm drinking it out of a drinking horn. So,
Yeah, for sure, your IPAs.
Hell. But all right. So I like to have my guests talk about their channel a little bit. So could you tell us a little bit about your channel and any other projects you have going on?
Well, thank you very much. I try to be the hardest working atheist activist that I can be. That is certainly beating out anybody else. I don't just do a YouTube channel. I try to get involved, not necessarily directly in politics, although I've done that. I've made that mistake too. I try to give atheists the most voice we can get on secular issues. So I am on the board of directors for the American Atheists and for the Center for Free Thought Equality, which is a subset of the American Humanist Association, which is their political branch that actually advocates and is a what is the name? I can't believe it escapes me, but they support and endorse atheist candidates across the country. And I'm happy to say that there are quite a few of them. And so I'm turning a lot of my attention to highlighting atheist candidates because we are the largest demographic with respect to religion in this country. And that just recently changed just a few months ago. When I started out as an activist about 20 years ago, less than 8% of the American populace would identify as atheists, and it depended on how you asked the question. Very often, polls would reflect that there were only 3% of the country that would identify as atheists, when in fact, we are now 1/4 of the population, and slightly more than a third of millennials identify as not having any religion nor deeming religion to be important in their lives. And there's nothing more atheist than that, whether they realize that's what atheist means or not. Now, there'll be some people who want to call themselves agnostic, but if you go back before the word agnostic was invented, the word atheism was already defined as a lack of belief in God. There's a question when you die. Did you believe in God? Answer yes means, okay, we can negotiate. Answer no means hell. So they don't care if you're atheist or agnostic or how you identify. You always go in the hell category. There's the question of, do you believe? Yes or fucking no. And no, I don't believe in God is the atheist answer. I don't care what the agnostics say. Agnostics say that they don't know, right? And that's true. Agnostic means you don't know that you're atheist. Or perhaps that you just won't admit that. And I have to go round and round with agnostics about this point. I don't know why the fuck do they want to sit on a fence like that? I can't imagine a less comfortable fence. You're either convinced or you're not convinced, right? Here's the question. Are you atheist? Are you convinced that an actual deity really exists? And I don't have to hear the subsequent question, are you convinced that there is no deity? I don't care. That's not the question I'm asking, because it still puts you in the same category. Right? Whether you lack conviction or you're convinced the other way. Either way, the question was yes or fucking no. Do you believe in God? So in the religions of God, in theism, do you have theism? Do you lack theism? It's pretty simple. If you lack theism, atheist. We're done. No matter what Stanford wants to say in their philosophical navel gazers.
Well, I mean, how many different thesaurus is that the proper plural for thesaurus? I don't know if it matters. But if you look in pretty much any thesaurus and you look up atheism, a synonym you'll find a lot of times is nihilist. So do you consider yourself to be a nihilist at all?
I didn't for the longest time, for the same reason that I didn't consider myself to be an atheist for the longest time. For about 15 years, I was atheist and didn't realize that I was atheist because I'd been lied to about what the definition means. I was told that an atheist is someone who knows there is no God or who has a positive belief that there is no God. And while today I can say that both of those apply to me. I mean, I have a positive belief that there is no God, and I have a justifiably true belief that I can say that I know that there is no God with the same justification and for the same reasons and to the same degree that I can say that I know that there are no leprechauns. Kind of the same reasons either way. But I wouldn't identify as atheist because it was always mislabeled to me. It was billed as an unreasonable position, as if we know things we can't really know. Well, that's what theism is. Theism is all about pretending to know things they don't know, right? Asserting alleged facts that are not facts and so forth. No, if you are not convinced that an actual deity really exists, fucking atheist. That's it. Done. Now, there are other subcategories of that, but that's not as important. We can get to, once you study a little bit more, you can come to where I am, where you actually know that there is no God. And prior to that, I had a belief that there was no God, but it doesn't matter. You're not convinced of the God claim. You don't have to take an opposing position, and you don't have to know what the counter evidence is. You don't even have to justify. You have no burden of proof for saying, I don't believe you. If the other person is making a claim that has not been established as true, then there is no burden on you. Okay, the burden is entirely on them. And if you're not convinced, it's their fault for having failed to make their case.
I couldn't agree more, actually. So, and you definitely put it more directly than I ever have, and it's probably because you've got a little more practice.
Oh, but I didn't answer the question about nihilism.
Yeah, nihilism, yes.
Yeah, so once I figured out that an atheist is anyone who does not believe that there is a God, not necessarily believes that there is no God, but does not believe that there is a God. Subtle difference, I know, but it actually makes a huge demographic change. It changes us from 20 years ago from the 3% to the 8%, and nowadays changes us from something like 6 or 8% to a third of the country. Sadly, most atheists, and Madeleine Murray O'Hair noticed this herself, that most atheists in this country identify as Methodist. So nihilists, yeah, because they sit in the church pews, they don't believe a word of it. They're completely cultural. I ran across, how many cultural Jews do you know? Right? If you live in the New York area, you probably know a bunch of Jews who are culturally Jewish, to celebrate all the holidays and all like that, and they don't believe a word of it. They don't believe there is a God. I ran into today a cultural Muslim, meaning he doesn't believe a word of it. The Quran is bullshit. God is non-existent. He just goes through the rituals because he likes to wear a dishdasha. Okay, fine. Unto you, do as you do, whatever. I don't care. But what nihilism was misrepresented to me as, again, a very negative position. I mean, I can't be nihilist because that's negative and stupid. Those people believe in nothing. Well, they tend to use the double negative in a weird way. It's not that they believe in nothing. It's that they don't believe in anything on faith. Doesn't mean they believe in nothing. It doesn't mean that they believe that life is an illusion. It doesn't mean that they think that we're all a dream of Brahma, as nothing is real. But what's that? That's the way it's built. Nihilists do not believe that there is that one way to put it would be that nihilists don't believe that your life has meaning. And a better way to phrase that is that the meaning of your life, if you have a meaning to your life, it is not arbitrarily imposed upon you by some other being. Certainly not a God that never existed. If your life is to have meaning at all, that's up to you to decide. And then you have to figure out what you want your life to mean and then work to that end. So it wasn't decided for you in advance, and the first amoeba that came to this planet wasn't here because of an intended purpose either. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and I'd actually be kind of curious to watch you pick apart a video I've done on, where I stand when it comes to nihilism. I landed on being an existential and moral nihilist, but
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Outstanding. Because I got to tell you, I bought the thing where I was holding the position that I ain't no damn nihilist. I'm an atheist, but I'm no damn nihilist. And I do a podcast myself where it's not necessarily a podcast. I like to invite people who don't agree with me about various things to come on and argue with me. And I don't charge my patrons for that, but I think it's valuable. I will never be accused of, I will never be legitimately accused of being in an echo chamber. So I like to publish disagreements that I have with other people. You make your case. And one of those times, it happened to be a nihilist. And okay, you make your case for nihilism. And he did. And I'm like, oh, damn, you got me. And forced me to change how I self-identify, which, how rare is that? How often does that happen?
Well, I mean, with people like us, probably quite a bit.
Well, as Carl Sagan said, change is often painful. And I kind of think it always is. Anytime especially when your identity is attached to that, when you realize that, wow, this guy's right, he's got a valid point, I have to change the way I self-identify. Or when something is a deeply held belief, the more ingrained it is, the harder it is to extract that and fix it. It becomes like a malignant cancer at that point. Once you realize that, oh, damn, that's wrong. I have to take down that poster, change my license plate, stop wearing those T-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I actually started the video, like with all the research and all that, from the position of I'm not a damn nihilist. I believe in things. And as I researched it, I was like, oh shit, I might be a nihilist.
Yeah, and look how poorly atheism is portrayed in the media, and then look at how even worse nihilism is portrayed in the media. Right? We've got the Big Lebowski. It's like the sole reference for what the hell a nihilist is.
If you believe in nothing, Lebowski.
Which, of course, what nihilist would actually say that?
Well, I wouldn't imagine many.
Instead of a sword-wielding Germanic terrorist with a car on fire, they should be talking to some, coffee-drinking beatnik who said, well, actually, nihilism is just the idea that, it's an arbitrary imposition of yeah. But that wouldn't make a good film, would it?
No. But The Big Lebowski is a fantastic movie.
It is. I showed my wife that movie, and we have a movie night where she chooses a movie and then I choose a movie, and despite all the movies that she chooses, I never lorded over her that I'm doing her this favor despite the thing that she made me watch. And so I had her watch The Big Lebowski, and she goes, that was pretty good. That's the best comment she's ever made on any movie that I've ever shown her.
Wow.
I showed her Jabberwocky. And all through that, and I've seen it many times, but I watched that movie, and my son and I, though we've both seen it many times, we're both just rolling all the way through that film because that's a funny fucking movie. My wife never cracked a grin all the way through the movie. Nothing. She didn't like it at all. Jeez. I showed her the Blues Brothers. Nothing.
Oh, come on.
It just celebrates men behaving badly. And I'm like, yes! That, of course, is what makes it good. Oh, well.
I mean, I kind of think that's the point of fiction. It's supposed to be like a turned up version reality where shit that would never actually happen in the real world happens.
You know, and it's funny that one movie, she chose a number of movies that I just hated, that were unredeemable, but she did show me one that I had never seen that I have to give her full credit for, since I was just dissing on her. She did introduce me to Snatch. And if you talk about a movie that celebrates men behaving badly, in fact, how can you diss on the Blues Brothers and you showed me Snatch?
I think you might. It's been a very long time since I've seen Snatch, but I think you got
Snatch
it on
is
that.
something that I've only seen 3 movies like it. They all come from England, and they all have the same premise. It's a triad of bad guys. There is no hero. There is no good guy. There is nobody innocent. So you have to decide which set of villains you hate the least or like the most. And another of those, there's Snatch, of course, and then I can't remember the other one, but then there was another one called Eat the Rich. And the lead was played by a leather-coated transvestite, and Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead plays a government agent, because that's what government agents look like, Lemmy Kilmister.
Perfect undercover, actually.
Yeah, I love that movie. It shows like a parliament party, a party at Parliament. Now, what kind of music would you imagine, you know, Parliament is having? Well, of course, it's Motorhead on stage, right? Because it's merry old England.
Oh,
I remember watching Parliament. I watched Parliament on TV once upon a time. And I don't remember what exactly they were talking about, but I remember somebody stands up and puts this big book on the podium. This is what the thing they're going to be speaking from. I would just like to say that the minister from wherever he is stupid, and sat back down. That's honestly what they said. And then somebody else stood up, put this giant book on the podium and said, I'd like to second that the minister from Apostate is stupid. Government? I can hear people giggling, right? So that shit, these people are having a good time at least. And then I watch American politics. I watch the American Senate, and I encourage everybody should watch the Senate. Seriously. It's entertainment, but it's also disturbing. It's like the one time anybody's making a valid point, it's an empty room. And at other times, the things that are going on are just outrageous. Just remember, watch the Senate hearings. They're all on YouTube now. Watch the Senate hearings. You will be disturbed. Fuck, I voted for that guy. And then you get to listen to the ridiculous shit that they say. I wish they would do that for the state, because my wife and I went down to Austin, and we sat down in a Senate hearing in Austin, and we were alarmed that there was not a person in that room that was as intelligent as we are. Everything they all said was stupid. They just wouldn't give us the delight of having called each other stupid in an English accent to make it funny. No, they're just saying stupid shit, alarmingly stupid shit. Like one legislator last week got in the news when he said that vaccinations are a form of sorcery.
Oh, I actually recall you posting about that on Twitter. It's either Twitter or Facebook. I can't remember. But yeah, that was horrifying. Holy shit.
It's amazing that how stupid can we be, right? Somehow stupid has risen to the top. Stupid are the people that are in the elected position. How did that happen? I always thought when I was a little kid, I thought that political leaders were where they were because they were smarter than everybody else. Because you would want to have somebody who is smart, who understands things, to be in charge of shit, right? It should be the brain that should be ruling, right? Well, as it happens, when I was a little kid, say 11 years old, my president was Nixon. And I learned really quickly, I say really quickly, it was a course of years of trials and all-consuming news over this hotel called Watergate, that I began to learn that maybe the elected leaders are not there because they're smart.
It's one hypothesis.
And now, of course, we have this last election, which, proves it as conclusively as it possibly can.
A little bit. So I actually do kind of want to, you bring this up in a kind of off the cuff way, but I want to talk a little bit about, I'm sure you remember this pretty well because you lived it, Texas Board of Education and textbooks.
On which topic?
Creationism.
Okay, because you can choose between science, sex, and social studies, and they've done egregious damage on all three fronts. And they've actually done, believe it or not, they've actually done more damage on the social studies than they did on science. So the science was just the more overt thing. It's just a matter of facts and denying facts, where one guy who had a degree in dentistry, who happened to be the chair of the Board of Education, stood up and objected to 150 professional scientists who were there to give testimony to the factuality of evolution, to say that this is something that we can prove really happens. It's not, if you want to believe it. No, it has nothing to do with whether we want to believe it. We can prove it whether we want to believe it or not. We can prove it to you even if you don't want to believe it. Doesn't matter. This is fucking real. We should not be lying to people and saying it's not real. This is real. Well, the Board of Education has for a long time had a majority of religious ideologues who are paid by the people who placed them. And this is not even a conspiracy theory. I mean, this is well documented. There was a multimillionaire, a couple $100 million, who paid up to I think it was up to $10,000, or it might have been in one case $20,000, to place these board members through their election. They get these $10,000 donations, or in one case $20,000 donations, for a volunteer job. Doesn't pay. To be on the Board of Education, you have to have your own independent income. So where do you have to get other people to donate everything, because you're working for yourself. Otherwise, it would have to come out of your own pocket, right? And then you can't get it back once you put it into the political system. So this guy was pumping tens of thousands of dollars to position right-wing ideologues who would vote exactly the way he told them to vote, and they will vote as a block. And everyone that has chaired the board has made public statements, blanket statements, that they will never support teaching evolution. As in one case, there was one of the board members said that she wouldn't even teach gravity as a theory. She argued that it was a conspiracy, that we were trying to reduce gravity to the level of theory to make evolution look better. And there was another chairman of the board said that she would never endorse any lesson that how exactly did she describe it? I can't remember, but she would never say anything that was she would never endorse anything that was promoting or positive towards climate change, anthropogenic climate change. Now you can accept climate change as a natural thing that humans had nothing to do with, but because Texas is owned by the oil industry, and in fact the entire Republican Party is owned by the oil industry, look it up. Look who the Koch brothers work for. They own the oil industry and they own the GOP. Honestly, the oil industry owns the Republican Party. That's why the Republican Party platform in Texas says that they will not endorse climate change, anthropogenic climate change, that they insist on teaching that and evolution and origins science as questionable theories. And by theory, they're being completely misrepresentative. They don't mean what a theory means in science, to put it in colloquial terms, is when you have a hypothesis and the hypothesis is effectively proven true because it's been supported by an overwhelming preponderance of evidence, and it's been tested and tried and true, and it has never failed, and it's never been contradicted, and everything comes back and says, no, this is right, that after 100 years of no, this is right, this is right, this is right, this is right, on every fucking test ever, Then it graduates to theory, which, you know, effectively the hypothesis, once proven, has become theory. Now, to give you an example of that, let's look at the germ theory of disease, which was proposed by oh fuck, what was his name? Everybody else will be filling this in. I can't believe that I can't remember. I can't believe that. Do you ever have these moments where you can't call a name to the top of your head? Yeah,
I am
Louis
awful
Pasteur.
with names.
Louis Pasteur, right? He's the one that proposed the germ theory of disease. And is it a fact or is it just a theory that germs cause disease? You know, think about that. Every scientific theory is also a fact, right? We have cell theory, which is the basis of biology. The basis of all biology, all biological organisms, is the cell. That is a fact. It is also a theory, right? Gravity is a fact and also a theory. Relativity, by the way, is also a fact and a theory at the same time. And let me see, there's a handful of others. But you atomic theory, for example. Well, we don't have to worry about atomic bombs because that's just a theory, right? Nuclear power, just a theory, right? So every scientific theory is also a fact, and that means that evolution is also a fact. It's not just a blind-ass fucking guess, like creationism is, or religion in general.
Yeah.
And I want to distinguish, because we are talking about creationism. We have religion, which is make-believing shit that you have no reason to believe. It's where you convince yourself to believe things you have no reason to believe. And then we have forms of religious extremism, where you lie to yourself to make yourself believe things we can already prove is not true. And that's creationism. And then it gets even worse, because you get into young earth creationism, where now you're denying even, you know, the speed of light, among other things. And then you get even worse, where it becomes like geocentrism, where now you think that the entire universe somehow orbits around the earth. And I have met people personally who believe this, that the universe orbits the earth. And then, and there's some prominent, even famous people who believe that shit. And then you get even further, and then you get into flat earth. And why does flat earth movement exist? It's because people want to pretend that there's this fallacy called the God of the Gaps fallacy, which is that anything science can't explain, therefore magic. I don't know, therefore magic.
Yeah.
And so they think that, okay, science can't explain a flat earth. So if earth was flat, then science can't explain that. And that means it's got to be God. But of course, the earth isn't flat. And there's every way to prove that the earth isn't flat. But these people insist on believing it anyway. And I've actually gotten people have written me letters telling me that they've abandoned their belief in God when they realized not that evolution is a real thing, not that everything that is attested to about Jesus was actually adopted or taken from some prior half-human God-man, but when they discovered that the earth is round, and that disproves the word of God.
I mean, it pretty literally would.
That's one thing I like about religious extremism, is if you're that far into the religious extremist realm, it's easy to yank you all the way back, because these people will give up all or nothing. They take everything as a package deal. They don't understand nuance, because they think only in terms of dichotomies. It's black or white, all or nothing, good or bad.
Yeah.
So either the earth is flat and round in the center of the universe and God exists, or if the earth is not flat, there is no God. I'm not proud of people who come to atheism by that means. I only want to associate with those who actually have an understanding of things and a desire to understand things. And unfortunately, with religious extremists, and this goes for the slightest of them, and even for people who still accept the science, but who still want to embrace religion, they want to believe things that are not evidently true. And why would you want to convince yourself of something that is not evidently true? I can't fathom that. But I've run into a number of religious believers, people I have to tap when we get into talking about creationists and so forth. I'll end up having to drag another Christian into this and say, here, you talk to the fundamentalists who can't figure the fuck out of anything. But I'm still going to have an argument with this guy because he decided he was an atheist for his whole life, and now he decides he's going to believe in God. Why? He confessed to me on my show, on my podcast. He confessed to me he just wanted to believe that there's a God. So he pretends there's a God. Easy, right?
That's pretty lazy reasoning. I just want to believe. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to believe anything that isn't true. Wouldn't it be embarrassed to be fooled into believing something that isn't true? And don't tell me, don't think that this hasn't happened. I don't want to believe things that are not true because I spent so much of my life believing things that are not true. And I've been deeply embarrassed about a lot of the positions that I've held as a young man. You know, there was a time in my life when I bragged about all the ridiculous crap that I believed. By the way, I'm going to crack another one open. I'm going to introduce your fans to Even More Jesus by Evil Twin Brewing. This is a pint can of 12% ABV Imperial Stout. I highly recommend it, actually. You can't buy this in Texas. I had to buy this in Kentucky because Evil Twin is banned in Texas.
Really?
You'd be surprised at the shit that's banned in Texas.
I guess.
Oh, and it pours exactly like draining the crankcase out of a 65 Chevy. I mean, this it's absolutely, it's black as your soul.
Now, if only I had one of those.
Yeah, well, if you're not in Texas, you can get one. Yeah, and I gotta show anybody that might be paying attention. I'm not going to drink this tonight. This is by the same brewery. This is Bozo beer. I know it's a stupid name. I really want to talk to Evil Twin in person and get them to market this differently. But this is a 17.2% ABV. And I could be wrong in the math, but if I remember correctly, this one can is worth 9 Budweisers. There's no way to drink responsibly unless you're just not fucking going anywhere.
Oh. You are probably the perfect guest for me because both of us share a love of beer.
Very good, very good. No, I will do hard liquor as well, but not I just don't have the passion for it that I do for craft beer.
Agreed.
I went for a long time. I stopped drinking beer altogether because all I knew was cheap ass, thin urine sample American Pilsner. And I went to the Czech Republic, and I was dining in this wonderful restaurant that was it was built like in the 800s, not 1800s, 800s. I'm in this basement crypt of a restaurant. I mean, you just can't get more arcane. I feel like I'm on the set of Game of Thrones, right? This is really arcane. And they're bragging to me that, hey, we invented Pilsner. And I said, I remember saying to my host, I said, you might want to keep that to yourself. And then my wife and I went to Poland from there, and we got a picture of ourselves. We went into some other little basement restaurant somewhere in Warsaw. It was funny. They put a restaurant underneath the building, so you have to go down to the catacombs to get to this restaurant, and they just bring us a platter stacked full of meat. We're not talking about chefs. There's no chef. We just throw carcasses off a grill. Put a huge platter, and you won't notice the problem because we give you a mug this big. It's this huge glass steins, and they pour like this dark, dank ass beer. I'm like, this is the Europe I always believed in.
All right. So let's actually take a quick step back into the crap you used to believe in that's not evidently true. What did you used to believe when you were religious?
The go-to that I always remember is, you remember Ghostbusters,
Yes.
when Janine is giving the interview to Winston Zedmore, right? When they hire the new Ghostbuster, right? Do you believe in astral projection, spirit photography, full trance mediums? And she goes on this long list and it ends with the theory of Atlantis, right? And he says, if there's a steady paycheck, I'll believe whatever you want.
You were that guy?
I believed everything. When that movie came out, I believed everything she said. And I remember bragging to a friend of mine that I believed in that. And
Thanks.
I'm so embarrassed about that now. But I was like, I don't know, I was a kid. I mean, I realized I was like maybe 20 something. That movie, somebody told me that I read somewhere that came out in 84, and I don't remember it that way. I remember seeing that when I thought I was 19 when I saw that, but your brain doesn't mature until you're 25. So it's all kind of just a haze for me. Anyway. And to make it worse, although I'm a grizzled and creepy old fuck now, I was a very good looking guy when I was young. So I didn't have to think much or work. I just had fun. And I'm glad that I got that experience, because I know a lot of people didn't get to experience that. So, but I believed in Bigfoot, for example, until one night when I was 25. And I don't want to tell the whole story because I've told it a number of times. But I was hitchhiking, and I'm trying to get to Arizona, a alpine forest area. The city was actually called Alpine because it's in an alpine forest. And I was going through this area of New Mexico that was also in alpine forest, and it was Luna, New Mexico. And I'm trying to get from Luna, New Mexico to Alpine, Arizona. And the sun was already down, and there were no cars on this fucking road. So I'm walking along this road in pitch fucking dark for hours, and I realize I'm being followed by coyotes. Not just followed, I'm being circled. So I hear a noise behind me. I turn around and I see a coyote crossing the road, going from my right to left. And then I turn around and I see another one going from my left to right. And that's when I realize I'm being circled by coyotes. These things can't weigh, these also called prairie wolves. They can't weigh more than 30 pounds. Surely, you little fucks don't think you can take me down. But after hours of realizing you're being hunted, you get a little skittish. And I remember when I finally heard a car coming down the road, I'm like, I have got to get a ride. I got to get the fuck out of here, because I don't think they can take me, but it looks like they're going to try.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being taken apart by little tiny fucking dogs? I mean, not tiny, 30 pounds, but still, we're not talking about great big old Rottweilers or anything. We're talking about little fucking hungry ass dogs, like jackals and shit. Can you imagine?
I'd rather not.
I can't imagine a worse way to go myself, actually. And so the fact that these little bitty prairie wolves had the balls to be closing circles on me, I started to freak. I mean, surely you can't be serious. I will take one of you and beat the rest of you with him. But if you've ever fought a dog, have you ever fought a dog? I've gotten into a couple of fights with wild dogs, and they are tough and fast. It's really hard to beat. If you ever get into it with a wild dog, you just lose. about the only thing you can do is bluff. And fortunately, I managed to bluff my way. I mean, the 2 times that I got in fights with dogs, it was bad. One of those times I had to be rescued by my own dogs. I kicked the shit out of this dog. I did everything I could to fight this dog, and he actually got me off my feet a couple of times, and that was damn scary. But I managed to get to my front door, and I happened to have 2 wolf hybrids inside my apartment, and so like I managed to get to my front door, pull that front door open, and those dogs rolled that other one up. If I didn't have wolf hybrids to my aid, I'd be fucked. So knowing this, knowing how tough dogs are, even little dogs, I'm now freaking that they've been following me for literally miles. And so I try to roar at them, roar! It's just the loudest fucking noise that I can make. And then I hear, and that doesn't scare them away because I can still hear them a few minutes later as I walk down the road. They're still there. So I hear a car coming. I need to get their attention. And I'm standing out there waving my arms so that they'll see me. And I roar so that they'll hear me. Because it's the loudest noise I can make. The car saw me, swerved around me, but didn't stop.
Oh, Jesus.
So I finally got a ride. Somebody pulls up. I see brake lights coming on. I run for that truck because these little coyotes are close. And I run and I dove into the back of this pickup truck. And the funny thing is the guy had a German Shepherd in the back of his pickup truck. I about shit myself. But, the guy gets me on. We take this ride. He gets me to Alpine area. I come back a couple of days later, and I'm hitchhiking again. And I know I said I wasn't going to tell this story, but then I realized as soon as I said that there's not going to be a way out of this. I'm going to have to tell this story. So I catch a ride again, and this time during the day. And this guy tells me that, Bigfoot was here. A bunch of people saw Bigfoot a couple nights ago. And it was 2 nights ago that I was there. And they said that ranchers and all these people, and people saw that people heard him, and I realized I'm out there roaring. And I realized I have long ass fucking hair because I always had long hair, and I'm wearing this big black sweater, so that because I knew I was coming. It was May, and I was coming up from a desert town where it's hot. But I knew I was going to be in alpine forest, and I didn't want to carry a big fucking jacket because I'll be sweaty, right? So I just packed this sweater. So when I get in the alpine forest where I knew it would be cold, I have to put the sweater on. So now I'm wearing this big old fuzzy sweater. So now everybody thinks I'm just this big hairy thing. And I believed in Bigfoot right up until I was him.
Well, I mean, okay, so Beej just kind of made this comment, and let me say, the clarity of your picture is fantastic by comparison to every other photo that's ever been snapped of you.
I got to tell you, a lot of pictures have been taken of me that come out blurry.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, I can go through. I mean, everything that I used to believe has a similar sort of a story about it. The embarrassing moment that I realized that there's no truth to it. I don't have to prove that it's wrong. It's enough to show that there is no proof to it. There's no truth to it, right? Because you have no truth to something, that's the same as that has the same level of credence. An unsupported claim has the same level of credence as a claim that has been proven wrong. Both have 0. You have to show that there's a there. If you can't show me that there's any truth to what you're saying, it's empty. So look at every sermon you've ever heard in your life. Every religious person who tells you what God wants or is doing or hopes for or whatever, God's mission in your life, they all want to pretend that they know shit that they don't actually know. And they're all just saying shit as if it were true just because they said so. Right? Didn't you hear the same thing from people who are convinced that aliens are trying to transmit telepathic waves through their tinfoil?
Yep.
I grew up in a handful of single wide trailers in Arizona. I know all about the aliens with their anal probes.
Uh, why is it that in these stories, aliens always want to shove something up our ass?
It's a secret fetish, right?
I mean, I get it. You're into pegging. That's cool. Just, you know. I'm not going to kink shame. It's all good.
Yeah, I remember seeing this picture. This guy showing something on his computer screen. He's happy about it. He's advertising, and this woman is looking. She's got her hands over her mouth. She's absolutely horrified, wide-eyed in terror. And the caption was, "Your porn collection. Best keep it to yourself."
Yes.
Whenever I remember having roommates once upon a time, and it came out what their personal kinks were, and what. What turns you on is not what turns me on. And we should not discuss this any further. I can't even go to the zoo with you anymore.
Oh, Jesus.
That's certainly not to a ladies' shoe store.
Oh, wow.
So did you have any questions for me?
I do. I'm actually kind of thinking about steering it back to your channel a little bit now, and why you started it.
I became an activist myself when, back in the days of Usenet, I don't know if anybody remembers Usenet anymore. It used to be that the World Wide Web was only 1/3 of the internet. Another was email, and the third element of the internet was news groups, which doesn't exist anymore, to the best of my knowledge. And I quickly found myself on a group called Talk.Origins, which is part of the Usenet group. And therein, I got into arguments with religious people and with scientists. And I was able to post questions and see the responses from both sides to whatever I posted, which is advantageous. You very quickly see who's got the goods and who's full of bullshit. But then people would get into private discussions with me as well. And so one of these people got into it with me where he was bragging about how his church, along with a coalition of other churches, had all voted exactly the way their ministers told them to, because the ministers were all part of a network, and they're all telling their congregations to vote in order to place certain judges and senators and so forth in key positions, who are all young earth creationists. And the goal was, initially, the person that I was talking to was associated with the Chalcedon Institute. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to have a Kitzmiller versus Dover type trial, expecting it to go the other way than it did. And I was really crossing my fingers on that, because I knew the plan in advance when I saw Kitzmiller versus Dover happen. And I was delighted that the conservative Christian Republican Bush appointed judge still ruled like a proper judge, rather than what I was expecting to have happen, where the religious right, we're going to get their way, and that this was going to become a theocracy much faster than it has already become. So these guys were bragging about how they were going to take over the government through these legislative means at the grassroots level. And their goal at that time was not just to teach creationism in public schools, which was the Discovery Institute's plan, which was released 2-3 months later. The wedge strategy was accidentally leaked to the public. But prior to that, this other Christian coalition was talking to me about the Chalcedon Institute and R.J. Rushdoony, and they wanted to they wanted to take over our secular American government and replace it with a theocracy that would enforce Levitical law.
Oh, I'd be fucked.
Just imagine the very thought of that. It's hard for me to imagine a Christian endorsing the idea of Levitical law. How fucking extremist is that? Right? I mean, just if that had ever happened, you'd have a huge division of Christians going, "Oh, I believe in Jesus and all," but that's fucked up. Where suddenly you have the death penalty for working weekends? Because that's what they do. They never determined what the Sabbath is. You know, the Bible says one thing and Christianity says something else that isn't in the Bible, which, surprise, surprise, that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah.
The Christians make up a lot of their own rules that they don't have any justification for. Like, where did Satan come from, and why is the serpent in the garden supposed to be Satan? Clearly, the Bible says it cannot be, but that's the traditional interpretation. The recent traditional interpretation is that the serpent in the garden was Satan. Of course, in the Renaissance, we know that that wasn't the interpretation then, because every Renaissance artist depicted the temptation of Eve, showing the serpent to be a woman. And the only explanation for why it was a woman by every Renaissance artist, including Michelangelo, including on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and the entry of Notre Dame, if it's still there, I don't know. I got to see Notre Dame before it burned down, and that's on the front and back cover of my book, Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, is a detail of the temptation of Eve, where Eve is depicted at, where not Eve, but the serpent is depicted as an attractive young woman, Naga, which is where the top half of the body is a woman and the bottom half is a snake.
See, it's interesting because you called it Naga, and isn't that a Hindu character?
It is, but you find that there's a lot of correlation when you get to the basis of a lot of religions. So, I mean, look at, you compare one line out of the Mahabharata, which is the basis of the Hindu faith. Well, the Rig Veda and the Vedic scriptures are the basis of the Hindu faith, but the Mahabharata is the world's largest epic poem. It's way bigger than the Bible, and it's one poem. And it's just one facet of the Hindu religion. And in part of that, in part of the Mahabharata, there is a line where Krishna, who is the supreme personality of the Godhead, advises the king that he supports to fight this god. This is a lake god. And at some point, Krishna advises his king Arjuna to, no, it's the lake god who hits King Arjuna in the balls. He does a crotch shot, and it fails. It doesn't take out Arjuna. Arjuna survives the crotch shot. Now compare that to Genesis 30, where Jacob is wrestling God, and God cheats by punching him in the balls. And it doesn't work, and Jacob still wins a wrestling match against God. So this is the Mahabharata and Genesis 30 are both telling the same story from two different perspectives. Now, obviously, that wrestling match never took place with regard to it being a god, right? There was obviously never a god wrestling with a man, and how the fuck could a man wrestle a god anyway? We saw what would happen when any human being tries to fight one of the Avengers.
And none of them are actually gods.
But obviously the stories have some basis in correlation. So if you start at where did a lot of these stories for what became Judaism began in the Crescent Valley of not the Mediterranean. It was an organization of kingdoms, Babylon, Mesopotamia. Okay, thank you. I had another one of those senior moments where I couldn't name it. Imagine Mesopotamia and the Persian Empire, which leads into the Indus Valley, where this legend comes from. Right, so we have a common bond in Persia, right, for where Zoroastrian arose, and this was the primary inspiration for Judaism. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Jewish scholars say that Judaism got more from Zoroastrianism than from any other contributing religion. In other words, that Judaism, the basis of Christianity, is itself based on a prior pagan religion. Can you fairly call it pagan if it was the first monotheistic religion? because Zoroastrianism was the first to produce the idea that the righteous man, upon his death, will ascend to the kingdom of justice and truth, being ruled upon by the supreme god Ahura Mazda. Whereas the selfish man, which by selfish we mean evil, would descend into the kingdom of the lie, ruled by Ahriman the opposer. And Ahriman the opposer, interesting translation of his name, Ha-Shaitan, the Satan. So the concept of Satan, which Judaism largely ignores, but Christianity kind of skipped Judaism and just like borrowed directly from Zoroastrianism to put Satan back into their mythology. And that's where that element came from. I have a great deal of fun exploring religious history. I was the only person in my class I went to college and I took comparative religions, historical religions, and I was the only person to get an A in those classes because I was the only one that cared about the subject matter. And I honestly think I was the only one who understood it.
Well, I definitely couldn't tell that you enjoy
it. my teacher in that class, who I still really like him. He's identifies as Methodist, but it's clear that he has a grain of salt in his belief system, that he doesn't necessarily believe all of this, as a biblical literalist would, because how can he? He's traveled the world. He's got his PhD by exploring all of these different ancient temples in person, walking through them. But where was I going with that? Fuck, let's just call it another senior moment.
That's fair.
Either that or this even more Jesus.
Apparently, you don't need more Jesus.
Yeah, I don't need even more. Anyway.
But a couple of minutes ago, Beach Price put in the comments that it was indeed Savage from Notre Dame. They apparently did get most of the statues and artwork out. It was really just the roof that burned.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about that, because I understand that people want to preserve ancient artwork and everything. To my mind, if ancient artwork has burned up, you're obviously not going to, if we're talking about the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, if the Vatican had burned down, you're not going to be able to replace Michelangelo. Just don't. Why would you even try? There's literally no point, right? You can hire another artist who can reproduce that artwork, but why would you? That's just gone. Lament it. There are a lot of priorities we should be dedicating a hell of a lot of money to, and billionaires will put tens of millions of dollars toward the reconstruction of a piece of art that is long gone, that if it's not the original artist, why bother? I get that. I'm glad that I saw Notre Dame before it collapsed. And some things you just can't preserve forever. I got to meet a handful of famous people while they were still alive, and some I didn't. And you just deal with the fact that, some things go away and you don't get to see them anymore.
All right. Beach Price has a question for you. Have you read or listened to, apparently this is on YouTube, In the Shadow of the Sword? It covers a lot of the births of different religions and where they borrowed from each other.
That doesn't sound familiar, but it does sound like something I'd be interested in.
All right.
As long as we can verify that what they're saying is not just being asserted, that there's actually some truth to it, that I can independently verify the things that I'm hearing, because as I said, I don't want to be fooled.
Makes sense. Yeah, Beach, DM me on Twitter and I'll send the links on to Aron. But yeah, moving on.
I got a question for you.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Where'd you get your name?
Believe it or not, about a year and a half or so ago, I was spending a lot of time on this live streaming site called YouNow, and someone mentioned, because I was trying to stream and I was using my real name, Ben Miller. That's not going to stick out in anyone's head because they're exceptionally common names, the both of them. And you know, I had recently heard someone, I wish they were joking, say that atheists are all Satanists. So I got it in my head just from that, you know, off the cuff bullshit comment that I should mix my name and what are they called? One of the seven princes of hell, Beelzebub. And from that came BMillzebub.
Okay, I'm going to spare your listening audience the history of Beelzebub and where that came from, and instead tell a ridiculous anecdote.
Do it.
This reminds me of a friend of mine who was desperate for a job and living in a little desert town in Arizona, and he went to go apply for a McDonald's position, and he was insulted at the fact that the interview asked, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Right, like as in with the company. Right. How do you expect to ascend through the ranks of McDonald's? And he said something along the lines, well, for the first couple of years, I hope to, like move up to fries. Yeah. But in 5 years, I see myself as Zoltar, Lord of the Underkingdoms. Come with me. You will be my favorite. I loved that. I can't believe McDonald's wouldn't hire him. That's a truly original answer.
You'd think you want someone who could improve morale, and who better? Oh, you're having a shit day. You're in the rush hour of the lunch hour or the dinner hour at the restaurant. Everyone's pissed off, and that guy just comes out with something. You want that.
Zoltar, Lord of the Underkingdoms? And I don't know where he just come off with the top of his head. Come with me, you will be my favorite. Mind you, this is from the same guy who rode down the main drag on a hardtail chopper wearing nothing but his boots. But
I'm debating if I want to party with that guy.
The main drag downtown, that's beautiful. That takes, balls. Well, everybody can see what that takes.
Oh hell.
Anyway, what do you have any more questions from the chat room?
I'm not seeing any in here, but I am curious about if you have anything you've done that you're most proud of.
The Phylogeny Explorer project, that was an investment of several years. I've lost count of how many years we've been working on it, but it actually exists as of a few months ago. There is a link that isn't yet connected on the main homepage, but it exists. You can there's a website that if I give it to you, you can go look at it. We're trying to create there's a problem where if thousands of people visit the website at once, it will crash. So we're trying to build a server relay system so that we can accommodate thousands of people. And then once we have that server relay system built up, you understand what I'm saying, that if you get over X number of visitors, then it routes to another server to carry that. Yeah, like that. So we want to integrate with Wikipedia, because a lot of Wikipedia's websites, or a lot of their cladograms, tend to contradict each other. And to clarify what I'm talking about, the Phylogeny Explorer project is an attempt to build a navigable online encyclopedia of the entire taxonomic tree of life. All of it. So we have, and I really need to get updated numbers, and I will, a week from today, I will have updated numbers, as I'm having a meeting in Scotland with our primary donor and a number of the other people that have been principal developers of this program. We had several months ago at least 45,000 taxa in the database so far. And we're going through some restructuring, which we expect will amplify both the beauty of the presentation and also the productivity of the development of the project. And it has cost us in excess of 100,000 British pounds. But it is the whole tree of life. If you want to know where you are compared to every other living thing, there is not a database on Earth that will give you that information better than the one we created. And I've been pleading for that and advocating for that since at least 2011. But it exists now. It was a dream of mine that existed only in my head for many years, and it's now real. But I can't give you the link because we still can't, the database still can't have thousands of people at a time.
Oh, well, if you're ever able to get it going and keep it from crashing, I would definitely be interested to.
Well, we are developing that. It is going to be a a multi-server system. It's just going to be on a relay. And it already exists. That's the thing. It's not available to everybody yet, but it doesn't have to. It's the fact that it's available to anybody at all, that it exists whatsoever, is the thing that I'm stoked about. Previously, the best rendering of the taxonomic tree of life that had ever been done was the Arizona Tree of Life project, wherein they made the mistake of giving $500,000 to a handful of PhDs to build a web page. And of course, when you're paying postdoctorates, right, you're going to run out of money really quick because of the amount of money that they demand. So they offered another grant, another $500,000, and that program ran out of money 20 years ago. So if you look up the Arizona Tree of Life, you'll see what they call the toll web is the best rendering ever done. If you ever get a chance to look at the Phylogeny Explorer program, which is the one we're working on, you can't even, we don't have little snapshots like the Arizona toll web does. There's no way to look at a little bit of it at a time. Well, you can only look at it a little bit at a time. There's no way that you can crunch it together like TollWeb does. And we don't eliminate so many things like TollWeb did. So there was like Proplyopithecodea, for example, you can't find in TollWeb. They just ignore that extinct group ever existed. We have them included, and we've gone through meticulously to include every extant or extinct group. We want to have every group that is represented by FossilWorks, which is one of our primary sources, except for the things that are recognized only by footprints or trace fossils. We want things that have actual physical fossils for, not just footprints, or, there are a number of trace fossils that don't actually imply actual physical remains, and we've had to eliminate some of those. I don't know if I'm making sense to anybody right now. But
I mean, you're kind of speaking Greek to me, but I'm not.
We've built the biggest, most detailed tree of life that exists already. And we are about to amplify that both in its presentation and also its productivity. So while the project will never be done, because by the nature of it, it can't be, we will have the most voluminous database that exists anywhere, period. Eventually, Wikipedia will link to us, because when you go to Wikipedia and you look up any clade, their cladograms tend to contradict each other. And when you click links within Wikipedia, they take you to cladograms that contradict the one you were just on. But ours are not. And ours are seeking peer review, so that we won't just be a valuable tool for students and teachers, but also we will be a tool for the scientists themselves. And they will be the ones to take over this project to make it a living entity. That was my dream. And how many people in the world get to have a dream and see it realized?
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, actually. And like, did you just want this like as something anyone can look at? And
Yes. Yes, like I said, if the thousands of people look at it at a time, then it crashes. But once we have the server relay system set up, and there's a lot of work we've had to do to this, and there's been, as you can imagine, with a fledgling project like this, running entirely by volunteers, all of it by volunteers, I realized that the Arizona Tree of Life project consumed $500,000 in a matter of 2 years because there's people asking for overbloated fees. And what did they produce? It's a respectable website, but it's not for $500,000. Look what we've done for 1/10 of their total investment. We have more volume than they have. Now, they have some encyclopedic information because they have divided out all of the Tree of Life into very tiny chunks, where we don't. We have it. It's gargantuan. The Tree of Life that we're working on is just, I don't know a more eloquent way to phrase this other than to say that it's fucking enormous. The Tree of Life is really goddamn huge. And so what we would like is that anytime you click on an individual clade, that you will get encyclopedic more information, that you'll get like at least a paragraph, maybe an illustration that explains what it is. But the fact is, for most clades, you'll never see that, because you can't see that for all of them, because there are tens of thousands of them already, and our goal is 1 million. And FossilWorks only has 3 times as many as we do. They only have 150,000, period. That's all of it.
that's definitely a lofty goal. Hey, damn.
There's no way to view the Tree of Life other than in the dimensions that the web can provide. I mean, you can do a little summary thing of it, but that won't make any sense to anybody. We want to show the actual detail, the link to link to link to link, and that's enormous. In named clades, the jump from molecules to man is, in named clades, it's 60 links. And most clades are unnamed. So where your senators, and I've actually heard senators say this, when they prove that bacteria show evolution in the lab, there was a senator who said, well, did it turn into a person? Sorry, there are 60 steps. And that's just in the named clades. That doesn't include all the unnamed clades, which there are actually more unnamed clades than named clades. So, and that's what my systematic classification of life series is based on. If everybody wants to see what we know about if they want to see a fraction of what we know about the evolution of molecules to man, please watch my series on the systematic classification of life, and I'll provide the link that you can put for your viewers down below.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the whole playlist there. I just uploaded episode 40 yesterday.
Oh. So I have one more question and a comment from the comments section, both from Jen with one N. She says, I suffer from sleep paralysis every so often. Has Aron ever experienced something like that? So,
her sleep paralysis dreams, do they usually involve something along the lines of zombies or some other such thing where you can't get up and escape?
She doesn't say.
That's the deal with me. So the answer is yes. Normally in my dreams, especially when things are going good in my life, I have powers. Usually in my dreams, I can fly in most of them. And when things are going very good, I can shoot photon torpedoes out of the palms of my hands. I mean, I can beat up a 7-foot werewolf. That's no problem. I mean, that's the way dreams are, right? I mean, I remember one time when I was lost to a villain in my dream, and I simply became the villain in my dream. I switched locations. It all depends on where you are in your life. But I have had a handful, just a few, of those sleep paralysis dreams. And they are usually where I'm being surrounded by some kind of, undead ghouls or whatever the fuck, and I can't fucking move. That's
right.
right. So the answer is yes, I have had dreams like that.
All right. And
Next time you have a dream like that, just call my name and I'll come flying down and shoot photon torpedoes at them. Out of the palms of my hands.
And apparently Jen with one N's daughter found a honeycomb coral fossil in the garden last week.
Really? I'm curious where they live that they have that in their garden.
Yeah, I mean, Jen, if you don't mind, you don't have to get more specific than the state, but
yeah, just general vicinity. Where I live, we have mostly Cretaceous fauna, and there's a creek down the street from my house where I've been able to pull up fossils periodically. And I've always been wanting to find a trilobite. Unfortunately, we don't have that fauna available here. But I am going to be going soon to a Permian dig within a year. Is it a year from? Yeah, easily within a year. I will be in South Africa I will be on a paleontological expedition into the Karoo, hunting for Permian therapsids. And I'm very excited about that. The scientists that I've talked to have each claimed having found their own unique species. And I'm very excited about the possibility that I might be able to find one of my own.
Well, Jen lives at Niagara Falls, and apparently they have trilobites there, so maybe if you ask real nice.
Yeah, I have a trilobite necklace. I'm not wearing it right now because I need a new jewelry backing for it. It's my favorite necklace.
Oh. Well, that I actually don't have any more questions. You
okay?
Provided one hell of an interview, man. It was great.
Oh well, thank you so much. All right, I have to rehearse lines because I have just over 500 lines that I'm going to have to give a week from today in London, and I have to know them all off the top of my head.
Wow.
I'm playing I'm filming a role in an indie film in London where I play a paranoid conspiracy theorist named Preacher who gets murdered by an adorable dominatrix. And I know it sounds really boring up to that point, right? But the movie company let me write my own lines, and I came up with this thing that they responded that they were falling about when they read my lines, because I just put together a handful of local Texas conspiracy theories that I was aware of, just kind of like blended them all together. But the thing is I really do have to rehearse 500 words that I can rattle off the top of my head within a week.
Yeah, I had trouble with the soliloquy from Hamlet in high school. So
yeah, I got to learn this. I got to learn this before this dominatrix chick kills me.
But what a way to go!
A friend of mine told me that today that this seems like a good way to die. Yeah, all things considered, yeah. Yeah, there are worse ways.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. This has been a really great time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I did have fun with it. All right, I'm out.
Take it easy, Aron. And everybody, be sure to jump down into the description box and take a look at the different links I've left for Aron. So,
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I do this full time. I do the activism that I do full time. So patreon.com/ARONRA. I really do need all the support I can get. And I mean, I'm able to do this full time, but I don't really want to try at in my late 50s to have to go get a full-time job again. So please, because I do 6 videos a month, and a couple of them will be interviews with proactive people who are actually not just suggesting a solution, but already working toward that end. I also do the systematic classification of life video series. I have a handful of other series that are addressing religious arguments and counter apologetics. And then, of course, my activism for secular policies. So if you believe in what I do, please give, remember that I make 6 videos a month. Just endorse those 6 videos, multiply whatever you can by 6. Okay, that's what you'd be paying a month. So please and thank you.
your Patreon actually is at the top of the list. So, you're set.
Thank you much.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you again for coming on. And for all the rest of you, I'll see you all in the next one.